Some love stories inspire the world, and then there are the ones that make us stop and rethink everything we thought we knew about love. We're partners in life, partners in work, and companions in everything. There's only one thing we're not. What's that? Married. That's how Goldie Hawn once summed up her relationship with Kurt Russell, a bond that has lasted more than 40 years without rings or vows, yet stronger than most marriages in Hollywood. But then, at 79, during what seemed like a simple conversation, Goldie Hawn shocked all of Hollywood. She shared a truth she had kept to herself for 40 years. "I never wanted to marry Kurt, because I was afraid that if we did, we might lose each other." It makes you wonder, does love really need a wedding to last a lifetime? And maybe it was that very fear of losing one another that kept them together for 4 decades. Drop a comment with 1 if you relate to Goldie Hawn, or 0 if you see it differently. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, because every great Hollywood love story has a hidden truth, and we're here to bring it to you right here. After decades of being praised as the symbol of lasting love, Goldie Hawn has started to chip away at the legend built around her. People began to question whether the happiness the world had admired for so long was really as calm and effortless as it seemed. Maybe she finally found her own way to live honestly after years of keeping her true feelings tucked away inside a relationship everyone believed was perfect. In the end, what truths did she choose to share that made people rethink everything they thought they knew about her life? These questions stirred curiosity not only among her fans, but also throughout the entertainment world. She came to understand that life isn't always flawless, and what she revealed might help others recognize a different side of reality, one shaped by challenges and unspoken struggles. Long before she became a Hollywood icon, she was just a young girl living under a leaky roof, teaching herself to smile so she wouldn't have to cry. Goldie Hawn was born in 1,945 inches, the suburban town of Tacoma Park, Washington, D.C., in a small, run-down house tucked between working-class neighborhoods. Life was hard, and every day brought a new struggle. When it rained, water would leak through the ceiling, mixing with the sound of her father's old piano. Even though his music career never took off, he still tried to turn simple notes into something beautiful, though it was never enough to support the family. Her mother, a delicate dance instructor, worked tirelessly to make ends meet while raising 3 children. Those early years stayed with Goldie, becoming the force behind her determination not only to rise above poverty, but to find a way to nourish her spirit and emotions, even when the road ahead was filled with challenges. In that tiny room, Goldie would often dance to her own rhythms, her dress spinning in the puddles of rainwater. It was there that she learned to smile through sadness, a fragile shield she would carry for the rest of her life. At school, between the teasing and the taunts, the stage became the only place where she truly felt she belonged. In the early 1952, Goldie was a small, awkward girl with messy, straw-blonde hair, often picked on by her classmates. But the moment music filled her mother's dance studio, something inside her changed. Her movements turned graceful, and her eyes lit up. Music was the only place where Goldie truly felt seen, the one space where she could exist without pretending to be someone she wasn't. Every dance step became an escape from the loneliness of her leaking home and the harsh jokes that followed her everywhere she went. When the music started, her small body moved with effortless grace, and the warmth of the stage lights wrapped around her like a quiet comfort she couldn't find anywhere else. Under those bright lights, she felt loved, noticed, even if only for a moment. But the stage also taught her a difficult lesson early on. The light never stays. It shines for a while, then slowly fades, leaving her in the stillness and darkness she had to learn to live with. In 1955, at just 10 years old, Goldie took the stage for the first time in the Nutcracker at a small community theater. The applause roared like thunder, and the bright stage lights lit up her young face with pure joy. But when the curtain dropped and the theater emptied, she found herself standing alone behind the stage. Her father was still working late, her mother was teaching, and only the wind walked home with her as her white dress brushed against the muddy ground. In that quiet moment, she understood something deeply. The stage could make people notice her, but it could never make them stay. From that night on, Goldie carried a soft, lingering fear inside her, the fear of silence after applause, the emptiness that follows the spotlight, and the painful truth that even when the world sees you, you can still feel invisible once the lights go dark. The more applause she earned, the more she feared the silence that followed once the lights dimmed. As a young woman, Goldie danced with small theater groups around Washington, D.C., before moving to New York in 1964. She rented a damp little attic room in Manhattan, dancing during the day and teaching at night, counting every dollar under the cold blue glow of neon signs. Every night, after wiping away her stage makeup, she would stare at her pale, tired reflection in the mirror and wonder, if I stop smiling, will anyone still want to stay? Her smile had become her shield, a performance she felt she could never step out of. Born into struggle and raised beneath stage lights, Goldie learned to live in the space between applause and the fear of being forgotten. The quiet ache of loss shadowed her throughout youth, like her father's unfinished piano pieces, or the rain slowly dripping through the roof of her childhood home. Everyone who came into her life eventually left, just like the audience after a performance. That fear became instinctive. Every time she loved someone, she braced for the moment they would go. And from that fear, doubts about lasting love began to take root. Even later, in marriage, those doubts lingered in Goldie Hawn's heart. Then, as if fate were playing a cruel trick, the very light she had once feared returned, making her shine brighter than ever. In 1977, at a small music performance in New York, Goldie met Gus Tronis, a Cuban dancer with a gentle smile and dark eyes that felt like the night breeze. He wasn't famous, but there was a calmness about him that made Goldie feel safe, something she rarely experienced in her busy, complicated life. They practiced together, danced together, shared simple meals in their tiny apartment, and laughed as rain tapped on the roof. Gus once told her, "I can't promise you the world, but I will always be here when you come home." His words made Goldie feel like she had finally found a place where she truly belonged. In 1969, as Goldie began gaining attention in Hollywood, they quietly married in Hawaii. It was an intimate ceremony with only a few close friends, a bouquet of white flowers, and the gentle sound of ocean waves blending with laughter. In the faded wedding photo, she rested her head on his shoulder, her eyes shining with the belief that love would never leave her again. 2 years later, the marriage quietly ended on a calm, rainless afternoon. There were no angry arguments, no dramatic scenes, just the scratch of a pen across the divorce papers. Gus, once her closest companion, left quietly, taking only a few sets of clothes and fading memories. As if they no longer mattered, Goldie stood alone in the empty apartment, words unspoken, surrounded by silence. She looked around at a space once filled with warmth and laughter, now cold and bare. Her father's old piano still remained, a piece of the past she couldn't let go of, the place she returned to whenever she needed quiet. She would sit beside it, listening to the sorrowful tunes her father had once played, as if the music could somehow bring the past back, offering a small measure of warmth from days long gone. But life rarely keeps the promises made by the sea. That same year, in the Grand Hall of the Oscars in Los Angeles, Goldie Hawn, the blonde girl with a smile as bright as sunlight, stepped onto the stage to accept her first Oscar. The world cheered, cameras flashed, millions watched, witnessing the rise of a new star. Yet in that perfect moment, she noticed an empty seat in the crowd. Gus wasn't there. When the night of glory ended, Goldie returned to their small apartment in Laurel Canyon. The hallway lights fell on her still unpacked suitcase, her white dress still fragrant with perfume, and the heavy silence that filled the room. Gus sat in the dark, a half-smoked cigarette between his fingers, his gaze distant. Neither of them spoke a word. Goldie came home after a photo shoot to find her apartment swallowed in darkness. She stepped inside, her eyes struggling to adjust to the thick shadows that filled every corner. Each step echoed in the silence, as if the apartment itself had been emptied of sound. On the table lay a single, cold piece of paper. "I need to go somewhere for a while." The words were short, with no explanation, no comfort. Goldie held the note in trembling hands, the faint glow of a small Christmas tree reflecting on her tear-streaked face. It felt as though her entire world was collapsing, leaving her paralyzed with a pain she couldn't put into words. Outside, the city sparkled with life, but inside her apartment, everything had sunk into permanent darkness. She realized, in that moment, that nothing would ever return to the way it had been. She can't convince herself that what she has is enough, because her joy feels like nothing more than the outfits she wears and the practiced smile she puts on when the world expects it. She feels exhausted, tired of herself, tired of the endless demands of life, and in those moments, all she longs for is real peace. The more successful she became, the more Goldie grew afraid of happiness. She stopped believing in promises, stopped believing in forever. Praise from fans, multi-million-dollar contracts, none of it mattered if her heart couldn't feel genuine joy. She couldn't outrun the truth that the more she gained, the more she lost pieces of herself. Because deep down, she had learned the hardest lesson of all. Happiness isn't something you can buy, and it's not something you can show off on the outside. The woman who once captivated millions under stage lights and camera flashes now lives in relative obscurity. Her vision is fading, clouded by battles no one can see. It's bitterly ironic that someone who brought so much light to the world now finds herself surrounded by her own darkness. Her story, cherished by audiences, becomes even more poignant because of this. If Goldie ever touched your heart, her legacy isn't one of pity, it's one of gratitude. Like a memory, a quiet thank you to the woman who gave so much light, even while much of her world remained in shadow. Goldie Hawn was born on the 21st of November 1945 in Washington, D.C., a city where ambition hums in the air, where power is reflected in marble buildings and gleaming corridors. He leaned in and whispered, "I've never seen anyone smile so beautifully and yet be so sad at the same time." Those gentle words were like a soft breeze, blowing through her heart and clearing away the fog she had carried for so long. Goldie laughed, the first real laugh she had allowed herself in 2 years of silence. It wasn't a forced smile or a hollow gesture, it came from a heart that felt lighter, even if only for a fleeting moment. Just a few months later, they were drawn to each other, two souls finding warmth amid a cold winter. Bill made Goldie feel cared for, cherished, and needed in ways that fame never could. He didn't see her as an icon, he saw her as a woman, with pain, desires, and unhealed wounds. In his eyes, Goldie discovered the warmth she had long been missing, the empathy and true love she had been searching for. Some nights, she opens the window and looks down at the city glittering with lights, wondering how many people are smiling right now, yet feeling just as empty as she does. The dazzling city, with its bright glow, seems to prove that life is lively and full. But beneath all that energy, Goldie feels a deep loneliness settling quietly in her soul. People say she's at the peak of her career, beautiful, famous, wealthy. But in the house on the Hollywood Hill, there is only a tired woman learning how to pretend she's happy. Every night, she sits in front of the mirror, wiping away her makeup, staring at her pale reflection and whispering, "If I stop smiling, will anyone still want to stay?" Between them, there was an invisible distance, the gap between someone soaring high in the sky and someone still firmly grounded. As time went on, Goldie's fame grew, and the silence between them only deepened. She spent her days filming while the press crowned her the queen of happiness in Hollywood. But when she returned home, the smile vanished. Dinner sat cold on the table. The chair across from her remained empty. Gus was reading the newspaper. Goldie watched him. They were like two actors lost in the same scene, unsure who would take the lead. In her journal, she wrote, "When I smile, he no longer looks into my eyes." On Christmas night in 1971, Los Angeles felt unusually cold. She believed this love would be different, that maybe the universe had finally sent someone who could heal her, someone who understood her without needing many words. On the 3rd of July 1976, they were married in Washington, D.C. In a small church bathed in golden afternoon light, gentle rays streamed through the stained glass windows, filling the space with warmth and a sacred glow. Goldie wore a simple white dress, unadorned yet radiating quiet, ethereal beauty. She took Bill's hand, looked into his eyes, and whispered, "I'm ready to trust again." It wasn't just a vow to him, it was a promise to herself that she would open her heart and not let past fears or pain keep her from happiness. In that moment, everything felt forgiven. Old wounds belonged to the past, and a new path stretched ahead, full of hope. Every panic attack, every tear she ignored, every performance she pushed through while carrying private pain became the raw material for her endurance. But this wasn't a bold, outwardly displayed strength. It was a quiet, silent power, a resilience that bends without breaking, a strength that survives until it learns how to survive. Yet it also felt like a prison, binding both body and soul with rules that left no room for tenderness. She moved with grace, but every gesture carried a deep sorrow. In her mother's studio, love was replaced by precision, affection by criticism. Pain wasn't acknowledged. It was expected to vanish beneath a flawless mask. Her childhood was far from peaceful. It was a test of endurance wrapped in satin slippers and ribbons, with blisters hidden beneath elegant lines. Her desire was heartbreakingly simple. "I just want to be happy." Yet even that small wish often felt out of reach. Every night, she would collapse into tears, muffling her sobs into a pillow so no one could hear, quietly breaking in ways no one noticed. On the outside, she was a golden child, always smiling, cheerful, ready to brighten any room. On the inside, she was falling apart, piece by piece. Years later, she would sum up her survival in one heart-rending line, "I laughed to keep from crying." The world saw her smile as effortless. In truth, it was a suit of armor built from fear, tempered by trauma, and held together with iron will. Goldie's story is not one of a fragile child. It is the relentless forging of a survivor. Love doesn't die from betrayal. It dies in silence. And in that silence, cracks begin to form, cracks that made Goldie Hawn doubt that marriage could ever save love. But just when she thought she would never love again, fate stepped in, bringing a warm smile and a promise strong enough to heal old wounds. In 1975, on a flight from New York to Los Angeles, 30-year-old Goldie Hawn sat quietly by the window, hiding behind oversized sunglasses to avoid the curious glances of passengers who recognized her. Next to her sat Bill Hudson, the young curly-haired singer from the Hudson Brothers Band, with a gentle voice and a smile that could make anyone forget their sorrow. But sometimes, even belief can become the start of a new wound. In the early years, their Beverly Hills home was full of laughter, the scent of milk, and the cries of newborns. Their son, Oliver, was born in 1976. A few years later, their daughter, Kate Hudson, arrived, her bright eyes and radiant smile mirroring her mother's. For the first time, Goldie felt like she truly had a family. In an interview, she once whispered, "For the first time in my life, I feel like someone is waiting for me at home." But happiness, like so much else in her life, didn't last. As Goldie's fame continued to rise, the glow of success began to blind Bill. "30 years later, the wounds in Goldie's heart still hadn't healed. On Father's Day in 2015, her son Oliver Hudson shared a photo of himself with his father on social media, paired with a short but striking caption, Happy Abandonment Day. The words cut deep, breaking through the calm facade Goldie had spent decades building. Emotions she thought were long buried rushed back the lonely nights, broken promises, and the helpless feeling of watching her children carry the same pain she had known too well. Bill Hudson, the man who had once been both husband and father, responded harshly. He publicly lashed out, declaring he was cutting ties with his children, as if anger could erase a lifetime of absence. Goldie didn't fight back. Drop a comment below with 1 if you believe in the power of time, or 0 if you think some scars last forever. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories behind Hollywood's brightest smiles, where every glow hides a shadow. She was constantly on set, while he slowly faded into the shadow of his famous wife. The affectionate phone calls they once shared gradually turned into arguments. Bill would flip through magazines, study photos of her with male co-stars, and bitterly ask, "Did he make you laugh?" Goldie stayed silent, knowing that any answer would be wrong. In Bill's eyes, silence was guilt. In Goldie's, it was exhaustion. By the late 1970s, tabloid rumors circulated about the closeness between Goldie and Hollywood's most charming leading man, Warren Beatty. Bill exploded in anger. He smashed a mirror and hurled their wedding photo to the floor. Goldie stood silently, saying nothing. The silence between them was no longer temporary, it had become permanent. Shortly after, he released a memoir titled "So You Are a Star," accusing Goldie of betrayal disguised as freedom, claiming she wanted an open marriage and an affair with her co-star. Hollywood erupted. Reporters swarmed her Pacific Palisades home, but Goldie refused to answer a single question. When asked if she wanted to defend herself, she offered only a faint smile and said, "I once loved him, but sometimes love alone isn't enough." She closed the door and left the world outside. From that moment on, Goldie lived quietly with her 2 young children, Oliver and Kate, in a modest house on the hill overlooking the sea. By day, she acted. By night, she read bedtime stories to her children. Once they were asleep, she would sit by the window, staring at the distant lights of Los Angeles, the city that still called her the goddess of happiness. Back then, Kurt was 16 and Goldie 21, 2 young souls passing like stars in separate skies. Years later, they met again, each carrying old scars, each with eyes that had lost the innocence of youth. In that moment, Goldie felt something unfamiliar, as if life were offering her a third chance, though it made no promises that it would hurt any less than the first 2 times. Kurt was no longer the shy young man she had known. After his failed marriage to actress Sayson Hubley, he had grown quieter, steadier, with the calm of someone who had stumbled and learned to rise again. Meanwhile, Goldie had endured 2 divorces, was raising 2 children, and had a heart too fragile to fully open again. A young woman with golden hair and a figure like a sculpture stepped into Hollywood's harsh spotlight, radiating an unforgettable brilliance. She shone bright, a living embodiment of charm and innocence distilled into dazzling beauty. Yet even in her triumph, invisibility began to creep in. The entertainment world celebrated her smile, infectious laughter, and quirky on-screen persona, but overlooked the quiet intelligence and emotional depth behind them. "I was famous for being cute," she admitted in an interview decades later. Her voice was steady, but it hid pain. "But that's not all I had. Behind the glamorous exterior, I struggled every day to be taken seriously, not just as a pretty face or a joke, but as a real artist."